with Kevin Lockett.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Digital Life of Kevin Lockett. Today we're talking to Akeem Jones from the NFL Draft Bible. So I'm a big NFL draft guy, but I'm a long-suffering Cleveland Browns fan. So I wanted to talk to someone who would give me hope that the Browns will have a good draft this year. A few things I like about Akeem Jones and the NFL Draft Bible is that they do interviews on YouTube and they have a BlogTalk radio show. And there's not too many people I've talked to about BlogTalk radio. And Ken and I had a great conversation about using BlogTalk Radio versus YouTube. It was a great social media conversation. And then after that, we started talking about the Browns draft. And if you're not a Browns fan, Akeem goes into detail about some of the players that's in the NFL draft. So if you're an NFL fan, this show is for you. If you're a social media person, we got stuff for you. So without further ado, let's talk to Akeem Jones.
Okay, we're talking to Akeem Jones. How are you doing today, sir?
I cannot complain. I'm doing well.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the NFL draft. But before we do that, since this is a digital show, tell me about your experiences using BlogTalk Radio for your own draft program.
It was my first time ever using anything like that. Actually, BlogTalk Radio isn't that bad. You usually do everything calling in through Skype, and it's easy for the guys to call in. So BlogTalk Radio hasn't really been that big of an issue. The only problem is that depending on what kind of account you have, you can only set up interviews during certain times, and you most likely, if you have a high volume show where you have to start turning out interviews, what we do, sometimes we end up doing 5 to 6 interviews a day, and we have almost 3 correspondents, so that's the only time it gets kind of heavy, where we have to always call each other and get in touch, say, hey, did you schedule this show at this time? Because I can just schedule a show, so that's the only time it's conflict, is like how many shows you can schedule in a day.
Do you enjoy the podcasting, the radio, or do you enjoy the video a little bit better? Which one do you like?
See, this is interesting because when I was in London working for BBC and Sky Sports, I told everybody right away, it was like, I like radio better because I can't stand looking at myself on video, because I notice every awful mannerism I make or just any facial expression, I just like, I got to get off TV. And I don't mind hearing myself on the radio. So, but actually the video is kind of more engaging because you feel like you're actually there with the person. And, I'm only 30 years old, and I talk to a lot of these young guys I'm interviewing. They're like, well, hello, sir, how you doing, sir? I'm like, dude, I'm 30 years old. Like, don't be calling me sir. And like when they see you, it gets more of a relaxed atmosphere. And instead of when you're on the radio, it gets really, really professional. I think the guys get more closed off and give canned answers. So I think video does a lot better as far as the flow of the interview.
Wow, so they get a little bit more closed off when it comes to the radio, more so than the video?
I kind of believe that because if you already agreed to do a video, you're already saying, I'm putting myself out there, so that's already out of the question. So you're not really worried about that. And when they see me, I'm sitting there, I'm wearing my Redskins hat or whatever, team fitted, and they just like, this dude looks like somebody I talk to regularly. This is some kind of cat I'll talk to at the barbershop or something. They get that kind of feel. When you're on the radio, you kind of don't know who you're talking to. When you're on the phone, you kind of don't know who you're talking to. So it kind of gets kind of weird. Like you'll ask a question there, just think, well, how should I answer this? So being on doing the over the radio does tend to give more of a closed off conversation, I believe.
That's pretty interesting. Now, the reason I contacted you was because I wanted to do a draft show, but I got tired of hearing the same guys talking about the draft all the time. So I went on Twitter. I was searching around, and I saw your one tweet where you told someone that you did look like J.B. Smoove. And I said, that's the guy I want.
It's been like a running thing since I came back. And I cut my hair off. Because I used to have dreads, but I cut my hair off there, but I realized I was like going bald, and I said I didn't want to look like Mike Tirico, because he goes out there with the male pattern baldness when he could cut it off.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going completely bald. I came back, and the first night out, some guy was like, I look like Teddy Pendergrass, so I had a full beard. I'm like, this guy's a fool. Then the next person was like Justin Tucker. Another person said, was it Mark Perfect hanging from Mr. Cooper, which I just said, you're automatically a racist. And, some girls sound like Chad Johnson. So I get like so many different people. So like every time I go somewhere, I post the next dumbest comparison I hear.
That is a broad spectrum from Mike Tirico to Chad Johnson to J.B. Smoove.
Right.
Because I get either Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, and then some kid just hit me with a J.B. Smoove. It's like, okay. I don't know how to feel about that, but they're getting paid, so I guess it's okay.
Right.
Okay, let's get into it, because you sent me a tweet yesterday, and you told me, hey, I'm not going to be that hard on your Browns. I was like, no, let it rip. Because being a Browns fan, I'm a Browns fan for a long time, good or bad. And the one thing that's been consistent is changing of coaches, changing general managers, and constant losing. So this past offseason, they hired Chazinski. They brought in North Turner as offensive coordinator. They brought in Ray Horton as a defense coordinator. Joe Banner came in. Jimmy Haslam owns the team now. From an outsider's perspective, what are your feelings of the Browns so far?
The thing is like teams sound like they win the offseason, and winning the offseason rarely translates into winning during the season. The problem is not who you bring in, it's what you give them the opportunity to do. And the problem with the NFL now is that there needs to be immediate success, and it's impossible to give immediate success to any team. You have to have a team grow. And I'll throw it to you like this. Jason Campbell, they just picked up as a backup quarterback. This is the whole thing with Jason Campbell. Jason Campbell came into the NFL with the Redskins, came in the same year as me with the Redskins. He had it was Joe Gibbs there. Then I think they switched to the guy who was OC in Kansas City. I can't think of his name right now. But he kept switching offensive coordinators every single year. The guy never had the opportunity to grow inside of his an offense. And that's how teams are. You cannot expect a team to grow and develop when you keep switching the guys around them. So how would you expect the Brandon Weeden to succeed when you already just switched his head coach and switched the offense already in the next year? You're not doing that kid a service. And the problem with Brandon Weeden is they're probably going to move him out, because when you bring in a new regime, they want to bring their own guy in. So now you're teaching everybody all over again. So there's no really pattern for success if you look at a team that's going to keep putting coaches through a revolving door. So I personally, unless they plan on keeping Chazinski there for at least 5 years and give him a team he can develop, then it's fine. But if you give him 3 years and start putting him under pressure after by the third season, you're not doing that man a service, because when the guy's in that situation, if he's getting pushed out, he's going to start making desperate moves to win, and that doesn't help anybody.
What do you think about Wheaton, his rookie year, and how he is as a passer?
He put up decent numbers. It was over 3,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, I think like 17 interceptions. But he's a rookie quarterback, and despite his age, this is all new to him. I believe if he had the same system coming into another year and they had pieces around him, you can win. And the thing about a quarterback like Brandon Weeden, just for any quarterback, there's a certain level of quarterbacks who can will their teams to win, and there's quarterbacks who actually need pieces around him. You have to look at what he has around him. Mohamed Massaquoi was an average receiver. Greg Little has the potential to be a great receiver, but he dropped so many passes. Josh Gordon came in, he actually did pretty good. But you have to have a solid team around a guy like that who's so young. You have to have playmakers everywhere and guys he can trust and be consistent with. So I believe that if they would have brought more studs in around him and gave him that security, he would be fine. But the guy's 28 years old, and he's not old. Well, he might be going and being 29, but he's not even old. Quarterbacks can play into their late 30s. So he has time to grow. That's what they just have to give him. But he's not going to be successful, because now he already has the pressure that he knows guys want him out. Then they have other guys breathing down his back. How does that help a young quarterback? I mean, he's old, but he's young in the NFL. So he has the tools, but his confidence is going to get shot up with all the moves they're going to make around him.
It's going to be interesting to see what the Browns do with Wheaton. I think they should give him a shot. But again, with Jason Campbell around, it's like it's going to be open competition.
Yeah, but that I kind of don't believe. I believe that Jason Campbell is here as an insurance policy. I'm not going to lie. People got a little bit of hype with Thad Lewis last year after he played. So I don't know if this is about to be the man here. But I just think Jason Campbell is an insurance policy just because he's been around so long. And that you need to have like a quarterback that can just be a backup and can actually teach. So he probably has found his footing as a guy who can help. There's a podcast that was called Firestarter, and I had a tweet from a guy who was talking about how Vince Young's not in the league anymore. And his main thing was like, well, the reason Vince Young's not in the league because he doesn't know how to be a veteran quarterback and be sorry and help a team, as opposed to somebody like Matt Leinart, who's not good, who's probably never going to be a starting quarterback, but he knows how to be a mentor to the younger guys and help them and keep his mouth shut. So Jason Campbell fits that kind of mold. He is a serviceable quarterback, but he's not. I don't think he's there to help Brandon, and also probably help another quarterback that they bring in to develop, as opposed to really be a starting quarterback for that team.
Yeah, it seems like Colt McCoy is going to have that type of situation now since the Browns traded him to San Francisco, so he can sit back and learn and maybe grow into that system as a backup.
Right, and Colt McCoy, I kind of felt like got like a raw deal. For some reason, I liked the guy for some reason. I thought he was pretty decent, but you had that feeling that they weren't really completely sold on him, and so anytime he messed up at any point, they were ready to pull him. And I don't think he knew he didn't have the support of his organization. That's tough with any quarterback, especially a young guy.
Yeah, I think he'll play well. If Kaepernick gets hurt, I think Colt will do pretty well. So let's get into the draft for the Browns. Let's look at cornerback for a second, because right now, D. Milner seems to be the top cornerback out there, and speculation is the Browns might consider him. But I've heard different things about him. I heard that he's the best, and everybody else are kind of a couple of rungs behind him. And then I heard some other people say, well, he's good, but the other guys like Trufant and Rhodes, they're just as good. What do you think about the cornerbacks in the draft?
Well, the way I look at it is just as far as the corners, they're all good crop of corners, but I think where the Browns probably should start looking, it's not even really the Browns, it's any team. There's no science to the draft. The draft really is the team that acquires the most picks have a better group of guys to pick from who can best fit their team. And the Browns don't have a second-round pick. So initially when they pick in the first round, it has to be a 100% hit or they're in trouble. Because, again, with you got a new regime, and they don't have time to be messing around. So going for a corner, I can see it D. Milner or Trufant. I like his attitude. And I think when you bring a guy in, Trufant does fit because you saw how he played during the senior balls, during the one-on-ones. He was aggressive. He didn't back down from anybody. And I think with their team, what they're trying to put together, they need to bring guys who are dogs out there. And with that being said, I believe they need to trade out of that pick. I believe they need to trade down and acquire more picks. And we were talking about how fast-paced turnover is that they have to start believing in their coaching staff, and they have to take a risk on some of those guys who are first-round talents but have character issues. So we're going to talk about a corner. They should probably trade down in the first round and get some picks in the second round and get a late pick in the first round where they can go for a guy like a Tyrann Mathieu, who everybody considered to be a top guy before, but he had off-the-field stuff, and they had to just say, hey, this guy's a first-round talent. We can get him for the cheap, and we can get some more picks. And we just have to make sure our coaching staff is going to be focused on making sure he keeps himself clean off the field. So that's the kind of way I would look at it. And when you're in a position with the Cleveland Browns, you have to just start acquiring those kind of guys, because the same thing happened with Janoris Jenkins last year with the Rams. He moved to Florida, got kicked out, was in a ton of trouble, but the Rams said, hey, we're going to take a shot at this kid, even with the off-the-field issues, and he performed just as good as any starting rookie corner in the league. So I think Tyrann Mathieu would be a good fit because that allows them to trade out of the first round and acquire more picks to go after more players because they have other positions to fill.
What about Matthew's height? Is that a concern or no?
It's only reason it's a concern because with Richard Sherman and with the guys in the Seahawks, it's been sexy to have bigger corners. Still, I think at 5'9", he's been able to show that he's going to compete, and this is the kind of guy who's fighting for his respect, and he's not going to mess up. And when he has somebody like Patrick Peterson as a mentor, that's going to help. So I don't think his height's going to be it's going to be a big issue. I think that because of the success of the bigger corners from last year, the NFL becomes a copycat league, and then, well, oh, no, we need to find a bigger guy to match with the big receivers, which I don't believe is an issue, should be an issue for him.
So let's say the Browns trade out. Let's say they trade with Miami and trade down to 12, or San Diego, and they trade down to 11. I've heard some people say, because I look at Chance Warmack as a guard, because the Browns need a guard. Some people say, you don't draft a guard that high. But my feeling is if you can find some way to put a guy in there who people think is going to be a Pro Bowl player, why wouldn't you take that person? So what do you think about Chance Warmack and some of the guards in the draft?
Well, Chance Warmack, the thing with him is that you have to start from the inside out. I believe that with any team. Adding him and somebody, and then you have Joe Thomas, and you have Chance Warmack, you have a good line. I think they drafted another tackle in the second round, I believe, last year or a year or two ago. So they're putting together a pretty decent front. So I like that. I'm okay with that pick. If they do go that high with one, I'm fine with them, and you stick him there because everybody says the consensus is he's going to be guys who will be able to play for a long time. So actually, I'm completely fine with that pick.
Okay, let's take a look at linebacker, because since they're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4, they got DeQuell Jackson. They signed Groves from the Cardinals.
Right.
But they probably need some more inside help and maybe a rusher from the outside. Who do you like right now from outside linebacker and inside linebacker? Maybe not in the first round, maybe in the middle rounds, maybe from maybe 3 or 4.
Kiko Alonso out of Oregon, I thought is a pretty good player who I did like at outside. And it's weird because he's not really a 3-4 guy, but he is a big defensive end. And the kid Marcus Hunt that was out of I believe SMU. He's from Estonia. He's about 6'6", 280. And this dude is just a physical specimen. I watched this film, and I really did like him. Somebody like him is like he can. I hate to even make a comparison, but he has that J.J. Watt ability.
Wow.
He is that big style. And he put the numbers he put up at the combine were equal because he had to start as a shot putter. That's how he ended up at SMU. He came there he was a junior world champion at a shot put. He came to SMU. They shut the program down, and then he's moved on to football. So like his explosiveness, his athletic ability, the way he can turn a corner is great. He is kind of still raw, but having a guy like that is definitely, to me, something you're going to need if you're going to switch to a 3-4 because you have to be a grown man to be able to two-gap. I mean, I'm getting kind of technical here, but to play that in position, you're going to have to need a guy who can play up and down the line, play from the middle to the end, to the tackle. And then you need a guy who plays tackle who can two-gap, which means that you have to be able to go head-on with the tackle and be able to extend your arms to be able to make plays going inside or outside. And it's tough. So those are the kind of guys you need who I believe he would definitely be an asset. I think Kassim Green out of Rutgers he's a small guy. He's an outside linebacker, but he moved down from safety. He was a safety at Rutgers, and he got bigger and he got closer to the line. But he's been a guy who's definitely able to play in coverage from his safety background, and he's an aggressive tackler. And you see the way he moves. He's still, even though he's at 240 right now, and he still has that ability of a safety. And when you see a guy who, it's just surprising to see a guy who moved from a DB position that is such an aggressive tackler and he can hit. And I think he had over 250 tackles over the past 2 years. He was two-time Big East Player of the Year 2 years in a row. I think nobody's done that since he's the second player to do that in Big East history. So that's the kind of guy who I believe will be there, definitely be in the second and third round that they should be looking at.
When we look at Ansah, Jarvis Jones, and Mingo, of those three, which one do you like the best?
I would say I like Barkevious Mingo, because I was just looking at his highlight tape the other day. I just like how relentless he is, and he just keeps on making moves. He's just relentless, and the problem with all three of those guys is that, well, two of them, Mingo and Jarvis, they're both lean guys. They don't look like they'll be able to take on an offensive tackle at all. So that's the only thing. They look kind of light, but they're very athletic. They're explosive, and they're productive. As far as Ziggy Ansah, the thing you have to look at with a team like we were talking about the Browns, they need to win it right away. So the fans are on top of them. He is a raw product, and you kind of do him a disservice when you say, well, he's kind of like a JPP. This is this kid. I think he only has 1 or 2 years playing football, and you're saying his ceiling is like a DeMarcus Ware. But his floor could be a complete bust. He could be a Vernon Golston because he hasn't had that much experience playing defensive end. And it's not easy. You're going against a different kind of beast when you go against those tackles in the NFL. You got guys who are super athletic, super long arms, and they're smart. You have a guy who was completely raw playing that position, and you're going to guy at tackle who's a vet who's seen every move, and because the guy is raw, a lot of things that's going to be happening in the stance and pass rush technique, it's probably going to give away the move he's going to do before he does it. So it's high risk, high reward, but the Browns have the luxury of saying, hey, we could take a guy who could potentially be great. Nah, you can't go with that potential stuff anymore. You have to win now. You have to go with guys who actually look like proven winners and who've been productive in good programs playing in the SEC. You have Jarvis Jones, not Jarvis Jones. You have Barkevious Mingo, who's done that. That's the way you should be looking at it.
And the thing about JPP was, people forget, he was in that New York Giants system, so it wasn't like they expected him to play right away. He sat there, he learned, and now he's a star, but people forget it. He just kind of sat there and learned. It's almost like the Baltimore system. The Baltimore system is like the old Pittsburgh Steelers system, where they drafted a guy, he sit for a year or two, and then he'll move up.
Right, exactly. And listen, JPP had football experience. That's the thing, he just didn't fall into it. He had football experience. He just played at a smaller school. I can't remember where he played at, but he played at a smaller school. And that was the only thing. He didn't play against a big-time competition. Ziggy is not. He played at a better school, but he just hasn't had that much football experience. And I guess people get fired up over raw potential. It's weird how the defensive end position has is turned into kind of like the NBA, like how you look at NBA picks. Like a guy comes out early and says, well, he has the potential to be great. That's one of the few positions in the NFL where they always just draft guys off their potential. Every other position, I believe, you have to be a finished product, or you have to show that you can do it. You get flashes of it at defensive end, and they just say, oh, he has these measurables, and we can mold him into a good player. And personally, that used to be the whole Raiders method, and we see how that worked. I mean, everybody knew the Raiders said, I don't care what the guy is. If he's big and he's fast, we're drafting him. We can teach him everything else. We can't teach speed and height. And that has been a horrible way to draft a player.
Right. Let's look at free safeties for a quick minute. Are there any free safeties? Because the Browns need a free safety. They got T.J. Ward. He's a strong safety, but he's injury prone. So they might look at another strong safety later on in the draft. But as a free safety, there's a guy in the draft, maybe early, maybe late, that might be a good fit for the Browns.
I'll plug this kid, Don Jones, out of Arkansas State, that everybody that's been blowing up. Because I've seen his film, and he put some good numbers. Even though it was a small school, I can't remember where he transferred from. I want to say, and I'm hesitant to say that I think he went to Ole Miss and transferred there. I took a liking to him. I spoke with him. He has his head on straight, and he's one of those guys who's just a victim of circumstances. He had to transfer out of school, went to a smaller school, but he's been productive there. And those are the kind of guys I think you have to look for. And even though I say you have to make sure you get surefire when you draft, you have to make sure guys are finished products, but you have to also look for guys who have value that can play and that you can find in the later rounds, because the thing with that, those smaller school guys, there's so many guys that went to small schools who transferred from a USC, that transferred from an Ole Miss, that transferred from a Georgia, and they just went to go get a place to get more playing time. Another free safety is the kid Rontez Miles, who he's a big dude. He's about 6'2", 215. He went to Cal, Pennsylvania, but he started off at, I believe, I want to say he started off at Akron, I believe. And, him and his brother went there, and I think they transferred out. And there's another guy who was invited to the combine and no one heard of it. And then his film came out, and it was like, well, where this guy been? Got a guy that's 6'2", 210 plus, can cover the field and is a devastating hitter. Why don't we know more about him? So those are the kind of guys I think they're going to find in the later rounds. I believe Rontez Miles might be off the board somewhere in the third or fourth round. So those are the kind of guys I believe you can find value at in the later rounds.
It is interesting after all these years with Jerry Rice being the best ever and Walter Payton coming from African-American schools, or any player come from small schools, that we still have this discussion about guys going to small schools. I mean, if a guy can play, he can play.
Yeah, and I was part of that situation too, and that's why I kind of understand it, because flip side, I went to Fordham University. We haven't put guys in the NFL prior to myself going, but now you have John Skelton, his brother. You have the Issa Abdul Quddus who's with the Saints, and I believe there's a couple of guys that are being looked at this year. But traditionally we weren't putting guys in the NFL, and the one difference that I did notice was the coaching. And to be honest, it just depends where you go, what small school you go to. I was at Fordham, was a 1AA school, but it was in a Patriot League, so it wasn't a high level of football, but it was high enough where you just still possibly get into the NFL. And when I went, I realized the coaching was night and day, and I was like, oh my God, if I had like the coaches I had in the NFL, who knew if I knew half that stuff, I probably would have been one of the most dominant D linemen in college. But that's what they do. Look, and there is some truth to just the coaching that you receive at a small school compared to a bigger school. And coaches do look at that. So if an NFL coach is looking at you and they go to a small school, they're going to look at, well, who's his coaching staff? If it's a former player who has some pro time, been around pro circles, they're going to be like, all right, we probably could trust this kid because he has good coaching. If not, they're going to have a lot more scrutiny against the kid whose coaches, they've only been at, a Division II, Division III level. So I can kind of get it. And on the flip side, I believe if the kid's been ultra productive, you got to take a shot on it.
That's good advice. So if there was a kid who wants to go to a different school, it probably is a good idea to look at the coach, saying,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's but when you're fresh out of, I'm from New York. New York is by no means a football state. So how the hell should I know? I mean, a football coach is a football coach.
Right.
I should be able to go there and learn something. But it really does matter, because you don't understand how much there is to know about football until you get around those kind of guys. And just the amount of knowledge I learned just in 1 year, it couldn't compare to the 4 years I've spent at Florida. There was no disrespect to any of my coaches, but how can I expect them to have as much knowledge as Greg Blouch and Greg Williams, who are my coaches over in the Redskins, who's been in the NFL for 15 years prior to that?
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at the quarterbacks real fast. What are your feelings on Geno Smith? Because I remember him when he started last year. It's like he was great, and then he just faded out. And again with the Browns and Wheaton, and we don't know if they're going to keep Wheaton or not. But I do think they're going to draft a quarterback someplace in this draft. What are your feelings on Geno Smith? And is there a guy that you think might be a fit for the Browns if they decide Wheaton is not the guy?
To be honest, I don't think there really is a guy in the draft for the Browns, and I'm looking from the point of view of you got Krzyzewski there, who probably doesn't have a long, like we already said, he doesn't have a long leash. You need teams that have to be able to compete against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. These are all teams that are going to the playoffs. So they got playoff teams they're competing against. Who in the draft is going to be able to put you to go against these kind of teams? None. And I think this year, what's putting a lot of pressure on teams is that Geno Smith, yeah, he is a good quarterback. He throws the ball well. He has good feet, and he's not really a runner. I think they just look at him because they're like, black quarterbacks is like he probably can run. Yeah, he's athletic, but that's not really his game. His game is like he throws the ball. But the problem is he's not on the level of a top pick. And you should not force a guy in that position. You should draft him for what he is. Now, there's going to be some desperate team that's going to reach on him, but if this is any other year, he's probably a second-round quarterback. But if there was a quarterback I personally would like, if I had the opportunity to say, hey, if I had time to sit down and groom, it would probably be E.J. Manuel, because you got a guy who is a big guy who is athletic and can run. And that's what the NFL is kind of turning into with the read option plays. And Christian Ponder got drafted earlier. I forgot where Minnesota drafted him, but they drafted him too high. And he came in the same exact offense as Christian Ponder and was more productive than Christian Ponder in it. So why would E.J. Manuel not be compared to Christian Ponder? So that's what I kind of look at. So if there's any quarterback I would take a chance on, I guess it would be E.J. Manuel, but it wouldn't be for him to play right now. He is a project, and I think most of these quarterbacks in this draft are projects. So Geno Smith, personally, yeah, he had a good college career. Yeah, he's going to be good down the road, but is he going to be that guy to plug in right away and going to have you compete against Baltimore and Steelers defenses 2 times a year and go against a Cincinnati team that's just progressively getting better and better every year? Hell no.
Give me your top 3 sleepers and your top 3 overrated players in this draft.
As far as sleepers, I think the running back out of Texas A&M, Christian Michael, I think he is so legit. The dude is he is legit. Like the way he runs to the ground, he runs with power, he can shake. His numbers at the combine were like ridiculous. And he jumped like a 43-inch vert, did it 10.5, and I hate to be the guy about measurables, but that explosive compared with his tape, I like him. I would go maybe with he's not really a sleeper, but he's a guy who kind of fell because of all the field stuff. A guy like Derek Rogers, who was a receiver out of he was at Tennessee, then went to Tennessee Tech because he got out of school. Another big receiver, can run, catch, has great hands. And this guy, Ty, really is not a sleeper. People know about him, I already brought his name up, but I think Marcus Hunt, I think he should be being spoke about as probably one of the top-rated defensive ends in this draft. And because everybody saw my defensive ends like the small, quick guys who could be a 3-4 and 4-3 ends, but we lose sight of guys who are traditional defensive ends. Overrated, and I hate to say, I think Ziggy Ansah is kind of overrated because, again, it's not proven that he's going to be that guy. I think Matt Barkley, and I guess I only want to harp on it, it's going to be Matt Barkley just for the fact that USC quarterbacks, you already know what they are. They haven't had a proven track record in a while for them to be successful. And they're always around the best athletes in the country, so they're always going to be successful. So we can't even say that he should be the next best quarterback or he's going to be a stud because that has not been proven. So until we see a guy come in, let's not keep pushing this guy as the second best quarterback or even saying he should be higher than Geno Smith for whatever reason.
Right. Well, Key Jones, thank you very much for being on my show today. If people want to check you out, where should they go?
If you want to find me, I am at Eurojones on Twitter. We have all of our interviews at NFLDraftBible.com, and you can go there to get our 2013 and already 2014 perspective to look upon guys for next season. And we have everything listed that we've always done, all the interviews we have with all leading up to the draft on allaccessfootball.com. Kev, I appreciate it that you're having me on. I apologize if I got long-winded in certain instances, but yeah, thanks for the opportunity, man. It's great you reached out to me. Really do appreciate it.
No problem. So everybody, if you see a guy walking down the street and he sometimes looks like Mike Tirico or JB Smooth, it might be a Keith Jones.
Yeah, and I appreciate talking to him. So
I don't even understand who Mike Tirico was saying.
The Mark Curry one was just like, that one I was like, yo, just get the hell away from me. And I just think they just thought of any tall brown-skinned man and just threw it out. I just really just thought that's what it was.
Oh, one more thing. What about Tavon Austin?
Tavon Austin, he's explosive, but you get rid of Josh Cribbs to bring in the Josh Cribbs type, and it's kind of like because of his height and size, you kind of like, how do you use him? Do you use him like a Dexter McCluster? But Dexter McCluster was more of a running back than receiver, where Tavon Austin is a receiver, but he can play multiple positions. It's kind of like we don't know how. It's like, how do you use him? It's like you have to create like certain plays for him, or if you just throw him in at receiver and let him go. So that's the kind of problem with Tavon Austin is like, where do you use a guy his size? His speed needs to be on the team, but it's just like, do you have to design an offense just to get him involved, or can you just throw him in at 5'9" with a $185 and let him run around, which we really haven't seen that out of receiver. Be able to like do that and be consistent in the NFL.
So what receiver would be better for the Browns?
I would like bigger receivers, and I think Keenan Allen that was at Cal. I just like the way I like the way he looks. When he gets the ball after the catch, he kind of reminds me of Brandon Marshall. His comparison to Anquan Bolden, but I believe he's like a 6'2", 220. The only thing that happened with him, he busted his PCL during the season, so he's recovering from that. Prior to that, he was ranked as one of the top 3 receivers. So, but that's a good thing, because now you got a guy. He might have ran like a 4.7, but his game film doesn't show that he runs a 4.7. So you get a guy like that who's probably going to drop again because of the injury. And now you have a first-round talent that you got later on, and he can definitely help that squad. But he could be the replacement for Greg, unless Greg Little really gets his stuff together, because, I mean, how many drops can that man have before you have to replace him?
Right. It seemed like he was dropping a lot of balls early on, and he kind of figured it out. I think he talked to he talked to somebody. Yeah, he talked to Alonzo Mourning. And so he did. That was the story. He talked to Alonzo Mourning, and all of a sudden he started catching balls.
He just needs a full year to put it together. Like because that's the thing, he shows the flashes. Like he was that guy in North Carolina, because Greg Little is like one of the most frustrating people on the planet, because he is that guy who will kill you in fantasy football. And I've already got screwed by him, so like I'm not saying I'm not against him, man. I want the brother to do well, but he's dead to me if he pulls that mess again. Like, he'll have that great game, and then you get rid of him, all of a sudden he'll come back with 3 games, getting about 8 catches and probably get 90 yards and a touchdown. It's like, well, what the hell was this the first 4 weeks? So we already know he has the potential. It's just that he has to be more consistent with it.
Right. Well, we'll save that discussion for the fantasy discussion later.
Right.
Well, Keith, thank you very much, man.
All right, Kev. Take care, man. Everybody, thanks for listening. I appreciate my time.
All right, I want to thank my guest, Akeem Jones, for appearing on The Digital Life with Kevin Lockett. You can catch more from Akeem and his fellow draft guys at the NFLDraftBible.com, or you can follow Akeem on Twitter at EuroJones. All right. So today's question is, what sports Twitter do you follow? Do you follow Kobe Bryant? Do you follow ESPN? Do you follow a draft analyst? Follow Polo? Do you follow women's basketball? What sports Twitter do you follow? Use the hashtag MySports. Once again, use the hashtag MySports and tweet me at Kevin Lockett. All right, everybody. It's The Digital Life. I'm Kevin Lockett. I'm out.
The Digital Life with Kevin Lockett.